Think, Grasshopper, Public Law? Private Law? November 8, 2019 by Anna von Reitz. What does it mean when someone starts talking about private law? It is obviously different than public law, right? So what does it mean when someone starts talking about private law with respect to public institutions, like the federal government? Well, think some more. The government is public, but is it also private? We, the American states and people, created the federal government. Period. We created it, defined it, empowered it, and funded it. All those functions we mandated and contracted to receive and pay for are public functions. However, providing the agreed-upon services is not all that the federal government does. And that is where private law comes in. Private law isn't properly law as most people understand it, at all. Private law is internal to a group, like a religious sect or a for-profit corporation or a fraternity. It's how they direct their own affairs and employees and manage their contracts, hire their vendors, etc. So from the very first, the Congress has passed both public laws that pertain to their delegated powers and performance owed to the states and people, and they have passed private laws that pertain to the internal administration and direction of government employees and dependents who are here on our shores providing essential government services. Public laws apply to the exercise of constitutionally mandated duties owed performance, and those public laws that apply to everyone concerned must be published in the Congressional Record. Private laws apply to the employees and dependents of the foreign governmental services corporations providing the essential government services referenced as part of Article 4. Public laws are published as United States statutes at large and otherwise plainly and directly designated as public law, for example, Public Law 27-103, together with disclosure of exactly which public this public law applies to. Is it the American public, the British territorial United States public, or the municipal United States public? Or the public in New Guinea? Private laws pertaining to the internal operations of the federal subcontractors are published as federal codes and regulations and public policies. Both of these forms of law created by congressional acts are merely legislative and administrative in nature, adopted by members of Congress, and subject to nullification by the states and people and by the United States Supreme Court in the case of public law, and subject to repeal by the executive officers, legislators, and/or the administrative agencies in the case of private law. The problem is that the foxes left guarding the hen house have been functioning almost entirely under private law and misapplying their private law to people who are owed and who naturally stand under the public law, instead. You can see how private law functions in your churches and clubs and working environments. You sign up as a Methodist and you agree to obey the Methodist doctrines and use the Methodist liturgy and so on. You accept the obligation as part of your membership in that church, right? You join the veterans of foreign wars, and you agree to the rituals and provisions and policies of that organization, and you agree to receive whatever benefits that membership provides as part of the deal in exchange for your membership dues. You sign up to work for KBR, Inc. and you wear their ridiculous lime green uniform and a funny hat, and you stand behind a milk processing machine all day and control levers that adjust miniature conveyor belts from 6 in the morning to 5 at night, 4 days a week, in exchange for an hourly wage and a 401k plan. Okay, you got it? That's private law. We are all familiar with private law. We all know that in order to be subject to private law we have to sign a valid contract of some kind, a membership in a religion or a club or an employment contract or something of that kind. Well, what if, unbeknownst to you or them, other people signed you up for a free membership called a conferred citizenship, and all the benefits and obligations thereof, as an unpaid employee and/or dependent of the territorial and municipal government services corporations? Then you'd be left standing with a doodad in your hair, subject to their codes and regulations, obligated to pay their taxes, and so on. And you would have no idea what happened or what hit you to create this situation. And what if all of this conferring of citizenship is criminal activity that these foreign, for-profit governmental services corporations have been involved in for years and years, just cranking away like bad bookies with a system? Call it the Federal Reserve System. What if the policies and practices of these corporations seeking to conscript and enslave you as an unpaid volunteer or dependent are recognizable as world-class felonies? Outlawed under the Lieber Code? Outlawed under the Geneva and Hague Conventions? What if these corporate policies and practices, their private law, results in your own native political status and all its protections being stolen from you along with your identity as an American, so that you lose all your property rights, your Bill of Rights, and everything else? Are you ready to tell these corporations where to get off and which end of their asses to light? Are you ready to demand that the Pope and the Queen responsible for this criminality make immediate correction and pay for their breach of trust? All this talk about private law with respect to any agency, department, branch or entity of government is just bunk if you are not legitimately and knowingly and willingly acting as a federal employee or dependent in the first place. The only law that actually applies to any American is our own public law, and the jackdaws in Washington, D.C. and their agencies and their court system employees have plenty of cause to know it. Now, you do too. Go to www.theamericanstatesassembly.net and reclaim your proper birthright political status. Join your state assembly. Write to the members of Congress and express your horror and extreme displeasure. Tell them, in plain English, what you think of them and the foreign governments, Holy See and British, that they in fact represent. And make it clear that they are in breach of trust and operating in inexcusable criminal violation of their constitutional obligations. Do it today. Links to this article and more can be found in the video description box.